Fintech Chatter Podcast, brought to you by Tier 1 People, the leaders in executive search for fintech ventures.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. And today I'm doing another one of my favorite formats, the origin story of Stake, and I'm joined by Dan Silva and Matt Leibovitz, who are two of the original co-founders. Gents, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Dexter.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
So, Dan, not your first rodeo. I think it's your third time on the podcast.
See if I've got something new to say.
Yeah, and Matt, your Fintech Chatter debut, welcome.
No, cheers. Just give me feedback as we go, okay?
I will do, yeah.
Proof for next time.
I will do. Don't worry, I'll be gentle on a first time guest. Well, as I mentioned in the intro there, these origin stories are kind of some of my favorites to do. The story of Stake is a one that I've watched closely, Dan. You and I have known each other a decade or more, I think. I used to hassle you about accounting jobs back in the day. Matt, you and I have had conversations in the past about what it's about to be a founder and some of the challenges. But before we go into that, do you want to tell our listeners a bit about Stake and who you are?
You've been on before, Dan. You give it a crack.
Sure. So Stake is hopefully a number of people will know, but we're an online brokerage platform that provides access to the markets for ambitious investors.
Awesome. And when did you found the business?
So we started the business in 2016 and launched in 2017.
Right. So we're what, 7-8 years in now?
Yeah, it feels longer, but that sounds about right.
Yeah.
It's like dog years, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's been I think momentous is probably the right word to use, couple of years for Stake. Timing wise, big investment announcement, just kind of, they're right on the precipice of, the kind of market shutting up. And what have you found has been, I guess, on that journey, and particularly this last couple of years, the kind of change and the step change?
Sure. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. It has been, obviously. I think the last 2 years, they sort of merge into the previous 5, so the 7 we've had. Yeah. And I think nothing happens in a straight line when you start a business, no matter what business it is, Stake, or if you opened a coffee shop down the road, or you had a bricks and mortar bookstore. Everything's tough ultimately, and that journey is never straightforward. So I think Dan and I have got a lot more appreciation for people that start businesses, no matter the size and scale of them. I think we've learned a lot. But in terms of the last 2 years, I think we've just got more mature. The market, if you think about what happened, Stake was pretty early on, which gave us a good foothold into the investing category. We're the first sort of broker that focused on giving Australian and New Zealand investors really great access to the US stock market, and that was our shtick at the beginning. That's what we felt the market needed. That's what we wanted as investors ourselves. And so we built something that was really built on a pretty straightforward approach, which was we want to make investing overseas more simple than even investing locally. And that sort of held us in really good stead. Very much customer driven, being customers ourselves, being, having invested in the markets for a long time. I was previously at a trading firm for nearly a decade. That gave us a really good head start. And then sort of COVID kicked in, and we sort of saw growth a little bit before that COVID period, but COVID really accelerated it, in terms of just, I think the investing numbers in Australia doubled. The amount of people that had directly invested in shares doubled over the COVID period. So, we had some tailwinds, and then we had some serious tailwinds taking place. But then you saw a lot of competition come in. Literally there was so many brokers in the market, and what we've seen over the last year is that sort of shake out a little bit. It's not really a market if you understand the category where you have multiple players. It's a bit of a winner-take-most market in categories around the world. If you think about the US market, you've got 5 or 6 major players, and there's 350 million people there. And Australia, there's really CommSec ultimately that's sort of head and shoulders above the rest. So there was a real gap for us there just to sort of play in, and I think Australian investors wanted something better, and I think we sort of delivered that. At least we tried to deliver that, and felt like we're continuing to deliver on that. And the last 2 years has reinforced that we are where we need to be in terms of just our focus, which is about customers. We need to mature, obviously, as a business like everyone else, and you can't get too excited about the ups and downs. You just got to keep rolling and keep building and just get back to basics a bit. I think everyone got pretty excited. It was pretty, it felt wouldn't say nothing ever feels easy. There's always challenges, but over 2020 and 2021, just things got a bit frothy ultimately.
Yeah.
And you just got to get back to just running a good, solid business that's built around your customers and your staff and your stakeholders. And if you do that, you're going to be okay no matter what you're doing. And I think that lesson applies to Stake as it applies everywhere else.
Now, we're going to talk about the evolution of the business in a bit more depth. But before we go there, I wanted to talk about really the early days of Stake, and how, first of all, you both got together, what kind of connected you both, and then what actually kind of gave you the confidence to enter into what is essentially almost like a business marriage, right? So Dan, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about how you kind of first met.
Yeah, sure.
It is Valentine's Day tomorrow as well, right? Yeah. So we'll go with a romantic theme.
Okay, so I don't have a rose in my mouth, but I'll see how we go. So, I mean, what are we, 2024 now? So Matt and I have known each other since early 2000s. So as you can tell by the accents, I'm also from the UK, moved over here 20 years ago. But before that, I was came over for a few times before. I was with a girlfriend, fortunately now my wife, and she introduced me to some of her friends in early 2000s. And Matt was going out with one of her friends at the time. And so we met, and I remember going to his 21st
I don't know if I remember it, but
but that shows. I mean, we're a few years older now. So ultimately, we've known each other for many, many years. When I moved here, in 2004, we then sort of hung out a bit more, and it sort of just evolved from there. We've also. I mean, this isn't our first rodeo as well. So we I think in 2005 we started a foosball business in Sydney, slightly different to Fintech. That was
fun tech.
It was sometimes fun, but no. The point is that we could see that there was a little bit of hunger in each other's eyes. We're trying to do something. Let's go and make something great. And then about 10 years later, I'd been speaking to Matt. I was in corporate, working in corporate finance, working insurance. Was looking at a number of ideas to go out on my own. And Matt came to me one day and said, "I think I've got something. I've got an idea, and I'm looking to sort of build a bit of a team." And that was sort of the really early stages of Stake.
Yeah. What was the catalyst to actually make the move? Because as you pointed out, you're in a pretty safe, cushy job. Even if you lost it, you had people like me chasing after you to offer you other jobs. So, what was the catalyst to go, okay, now we're going to give all that up and we're going to go and do our own thing?
I think there's different motivations for both of us. From my perspective,
was there a moment though that kind of where you just went, "Fuck it, let's do it"?
I mean, I basically already made the decision that I wanted to do something off my own back.
Yeah.
I was looking at a number of different ideas, Fintech being one of them, but there was a number of things. And ultimately, what I found is that all of the ideas were actually, some of them are pretty good, and some of them I've seen in the market as well. But it was about, I didn't have anybody to do it with. And so this idea, when Matt came to me, is like, I've got this great idea, which is based on my own personal experience of being in the US and people outside the US not being able to access the markets, the financial markets. But it was also, and looking to build a team around it. So it was this idea about we've got an idea, a concept that's based in a reality, as well as we're actually going to go and work together to go and deliver it.
Yeah. What was it for you?
Yeah, look, as Jan said, everyone's got different motivations. I was at Optiva, absolutely loved it, still love it. It's an amazing place. Got a lot of close friends there, and would very close to my heart. But I just had an itch to do something different, and like Dan, try something on my own bat. I came in a little bit later, and I was probably at a different stage to Dan in terms of I think no, I'll probably say Dan was probably less happy at his work. I was very happy at my work, if I can say that. You could sense that from Dan. And, Dan and I, we had a very close relationship. We trusted each other. And I think as you grow and develop, you learn to appreciate that more and more about each other, and you need to work with someone you trust. And we just believe we can do whatever we put our minds to, if we work together and as a team, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I think you just take a bit of a leap of faith, and I think that's what we did really when we got started. We made in a few wrong directions at the beginning in terms of just the people, the team, the structure, even just our focus, but we found a way through it, and I think that's the key to any success. Ultimately, it's you're gonna get a lot of obstacles in the way, and I just felt with Dan that we could get over them together.
Yeah.
And I still feel that. And I could talk really openly here, and we can obviously, Dan and I may differ on this, but our relationships actually got stronger in a strange way. Like, we probably see each other less socially because we saw each other a lot before. But it's so intense building a business with someone. As you said, it's like a marriage. You just get to know them so well. But, it's not 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's like, it's 6 a.m. to midnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Saturday to Sunday, all the way through.
It's the intensity as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and I think, look, it's been an amazing journey. It's been tough, and, not necessarily together, but just generally, I think building business is really tough, but I think that's what makes it a little more exciting.
Now, I mentioned earlier about a momentous kind of moment for me. Externally looking at it is when you got the huge investment round, even, by those standards, back then, today, it would be absolutely monstrous, but it was a fairly significant funding round that you got. Can you tell us about that investment, and then what it's enabled you to do with the business from that point?
Sure. So, again, I think, we've been going at this for about 8 years. The first 4 or 5 years, we were growing pretty well. We were getting okay growth. We were making a name for ourselves in the Australian market primarily. And then, as Matt said, COVID hit, and that really changed the landscape for us. And the addressable market changed, and really it was like a meeting of our aspiration with actually the market accelerating that through. So we look at it and go, wow, actually we expected to have, this is our expectation around what it looks like to start a fintech business in online brokerage in Australia and New Zealand and the UK, but actually the opportunities got so much greater. And other people realised that as well, and wanted to go and invest behind that momentum and invest behind that team and product and brand. And so us having had 4 or 5 years in market was hugely beneficial for us. We sort of got through a lot of the hard times, so to speak. And then this was just now, how do we accelerate that? And to accelerate that growth and accelerate that going through the maturity curve. So that's sort of what drove it. What it looked like in practice is that we're fortunate enough we raised $40 million in 2021, and then we had a follow-up of an additional 50 in 2022. So that was, but prior to that, it was very much like us funding it. It was friends and family, and so we really took the business to a very different level and trajectory. But as I said, it was driven based on the opportunity in the market and what we built up to that point, and our ability the confidence in our ability to go and take it forward.
Yeah, I feel I've kind of got to put this point in there as well, that to put it into context. When BNPL was at the height of the market, to get an investment, it was like, that's where all the money's going. But at the point where you got the investment, it was, you had a lot of bad press about Robinhood. That was kind of on the decline. And so there were a lot of questions around actually the validity of, the similar businesses that operated in the same space as you. And yet, at the point that you got that investment as well, I mean, everything was off the table, right? I think it's something to point out that, the timing of this, it wasn't just fortuitous. It was actually that, hey, look, it could have easily not happened. So for you to get the backing that you got, and the the investors to be so behind you at a time where they could have quite easily got cold feet and said, hey, hang on, we're out of here. What is it that you kind of put that down to, and how were you able to give investors the confidence in yourselves, in the business, and also about how you were going to execute on the plans that they would, kind of stay committed at a moment where everybody else was getting out of Dodge?
Yeah, I mean, we built this business to be a business that's around for 100, 200 years. Like, we're not here for we're not here to sell it. We're here to build it, and we really believe in what we're building, and we're building it for people like us, and we really believe that. And hopefully that comes through in the way we love the product, we love our customers, we love the team that we work with. It's actually just an amazing business to be able to build and see where we can take it. And I think when you're honest and realistic about what you're trying to achieve, like we're not hiding away from this is going to be a long, hard journey, but it's going to be exciting too. I think people buy into that and they see that. And I think if, you've walked around the offices here, like there's a real energy around what we're doing. And I think hopefully our investors saw that, and that was part of it.
Yeah.
And I think we're really excited about what we can provide to Australians. We think that there's so much more to provide them in terms of their financial well-being and their financial security going forward, and we want to play a major part in that. Yeah. We want to be the leading brand for ambitious investors in Australia. Like, we want to be the place where they go and grow and manage their wealth for decades to come. And I think maybe during that period of 2020, 2021, it was like you buy it, then you sell it. That's just not what Stake's about.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to be here. We want to really change the category, and I think our investors see that too.
Now, in order to make those changes and to build that type of enduring business, as incredible a job that the both of you done to that point, kind of every business reaches a point where it outgrows its founders.
Yeah.
And I remember at the end of 2022, you and I were coming back from Singapore Fintech Festival, Matt, and we had a conversation on the plane about something that when I seen the press release, I was like, yeah, well, this has been this isn't an overnight thing. This is something that, has been on Matt and Dan's mind for a long time. At what point did you recognize that you kind of had to bring in support around you and above you to help on delivering and kind of executing on the vision?
I can take that one. I think you got to realize that Dan and I are doing this for the first time. There's people that have done it before that are better than you. You got people in different parts of the business that fulfill roles that you can't do, and you're not the best at everything, definitely not. And that you need people better than you to take yourself forward, and you learn from them. It's like when you play sport against people better than you, pick up tricks and you learn stuff, and it's actually it's really inspiring, and you get to get better. And also this is a major opportunity there, so we need to get great people around us. And Dan and I have been ultimately slogging away for 7, 8 years respectively, and we want to make sure that we've got the right people around us so we can, one, learn and develop ourselves personally, but also take Stake to another level. And you just need, every business goes through this, every successful business gets to a point, like we're growing so quickly and there's still so many things we need to and want to do. You need to have the foundations there, and those foundations, at the end of the day, business is, well, the definition of a company is people, really. Yeah. And you need to have people around you to do it. And I've been sort of talking about this with Dan, I don't know, maybe, a year and a half from now, just to say I think we've got something pretty exciting here, and we actually probably can't do it ourselves. Yeah. And that's okay. And I think it's been an ongoing discussion. Dan and I had lots of chats with different candidates, and we knew we needed to get a chairman of financial services experience in Australia. Like Dan and I, I came from a trading background, Dan came from corporate finance, and we wanted to sort of attack the wealth space, but really just be really amazing at brokerage and then give people an opportunity to grow their wealth further. And we just didn't have that skill set in the business, so we needed to go find it. And then when you're north of 100 people, like you need proper systems and processes to go from 100 to 200 and scale the business 3, 4, 5 times as large. And it's nothing Dan and I had done before, and that's okay. Let's go find people that believe in what we're doing, we want to work with, and we can learn from, and the team can be better with.
So it was a real statement hire Dan in bringing in Jeff Lloyd, ex-Perpetual. I guess first of all, what was the kind of reaction that you got from the market? Have you kind of seen that? Has there been a perception around who Stake is now, and that you're really serious players?
I hope that I hope that we're just building on it, to be honest. And I think that this is just where we're at in the maturity curve. It's obviously, it was a conscious decision that we wanted to bring in that caliber of person. Jeff's been amazing over the past 12 months in his capacity as chair. He's got huge contacts across the industry. He understands at a very deep level how financial services works and what scale looks like, and doing so with a strong governance and risk-based approach. So that's been amazing. I hope that's definitely what we were trying to do with our internally, and hopefully that will have some impact with external stakeholders, and definitely a big benefit with the business.
Yeah, and look, for me, it was a real statement of Fintech in Australia now is serious. It's kind of grown up. To your point, I think earlier, Matt, I think one of the frustrations that I'm feeling at the minute is a lot of founders in the industry kind of still think it's 2017 where you can shout and say how awesome you are, and the investment dollars will come. It's not. It's like you've got to be building a serious business, solving a serious problem, right? With serious people who can actually deliver on it.
And there are lots of people. I mean, what we've learned off Jeff, and just to understand the category and where the space is going. And he was sending us stuff overnight from overseas in the US. Like, he lives and breathes it. Yeah. And you need to have that level of energy to go and make it happen. There are great people that have come out of, that want to be part of fintech stories. I was meeting someone today who was, ex-investment banking. It's still a growing space in Australia, and there's actually a great talent pool. Historically, Australia's been run with, 4 or 5 major retail banks. There's been a lot of great investment talent that's gone and worked in Europe or Asia. It's coming back here. Like, we've actually, we're still at the beginning of this journey. Yeah. And there is great talent that will come here, and we can build something pretty amazing. You think about what fintech's done in Australia from, where we are in the world. We've actually had some amazing companies that have sort of flown the flag internationally. And also locally. So I'm still really bullish on the category, but I think you're right. It's about, you just got to do things properly. I think that if you build a solid, if you're customer facing and you're customer first in terms of your product and your business, and you build, and innovation comes from within, and you create the structures to do that with good people, you'll be okay. But you're right. You just got to we got to take a bit of a step back and actually just build proper foundations, and then we'll accelerate from that.
And to your point, Matt, as well, I think where your stake is at in terms of the size and the scale and where you are in the market and market share, you've now earned the right, and you're actually at the right, I think, point that people coming from investment banks and investment houses are going to come in and make an impact. Whereas if they came 5 years ago, they'd be like fish out of water, right? It's what's going on.
No, they'd be incredibly frustrated, and it wouldn't actually be fair to bring them in because we didn't have the process in place, and we were, 3 or 4 of us scrapping around trying to make something happen. Now there's actually a clear mandate and governance structure and process, and that's okay. It's it's not everyone's cup of tea, and people come and go from a business, but it's what you need to do to get to the next level. So we've got no qualms about that.
So Dan, we've talked a couple of times on the podcast, and every time that I see you, your role has changed and evolved. And there was an announcement just earlier this year. You brought in a CEO. So how has that, I guess, first of all, how has that impacted your roles? And then second of all, what was the thinking behind bringing in a CEO?
Sure. So I think maybe I'll take the first one, the second one first. That's okay. Right. So I think the thinking behind it, and we sort of touched on this a bit before, but ultimately, where we're at in the life cycle of stake, to be able to really take advantage of the opportunity that we believe we've got ahead of us in Australia and New Zealand financial services landscape, we need to go and bring in some talent to do stuff that, as Matt said, we don't know everything. We haven't done this before. Somebody who's done it before, who understands the landscape, who understands what growth looks like, who deep customer insights, and also can help our team develop and grow. And that was really the core brief. So really bring somebody in who can support us and allow Matt ultimately to go and focus where his strengths are. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at what I was doing, obviously. Thanks, Dan. I never said that to me straight, but I appreciate the honesty. No, from my point of view, as I said, Dan and I have been chatting for a while. To have Jeff and then John join us. John joined as the CCO. We'd been having a discussion with him for 3 to 6 months before he even joined as our CCO and then transitioned into the CEO role. Yeah, I couldn't be happier at a personal level and for the business. Dan, I think, is much the same. We just know what we want to be doing. You never start a business to be a CEO. If you do it, it's the wrong reason. Like, you start it because you love what you're building, you love what you can take to customers, and you love being part of a team. And that hasn't changed for me. But I was doing things that one, had never done before, and two, probably, as Dan said, didn't suit my skill set. I'm very much a customer focused. I want to focus on products. I want to see what the gaps are in the market. How do we solve problems and actually just go build stuff? Where John is a lot more disciplined. He's got a lot more energy around management and structures. I can openly say I'm probably an okay leader. I'm probably not the best manager in terms of just those processes and structures, but John's brought that, and it's a really good addition to the team. And I know the team is far happier, and in terms of just getting the structures and the process in place for Stake to go from where we are now to, as I said, being the number one place for ambitious investors in Australia to go and grow and manage their wealth. And John's going to help us get there, but it's along with the whole team. And as I said, I couldn't be happier. It's like a weight off my shoulders, really, just in terms of being able to do and add more value. You can bang your head against the wall and think that you're the only person that could be the CEO, but that's just not the case when you're a founder. Your job as a founder, and I say this to all founders, is to go create value for your stakeholders, whether that be your customers, your staff, your shareholders, or your partners. And you just got to put yourself in the best position to do that, and doesn't mean you need to be the CEO to do that. It's
a really interesting point, and part of the criteria that I've got when I'm working with businesses, I prefer not to work with businesses that are pre-Series A, because when you're bringing in exec talent, first of all, I don't think the business is quite at a point where it actually needs to bring in external executive talent where they're going to get full value from it. Second of all, it's really difficult for the founders to let go because they're still doing everything. So that kind of paradox, would you say that the point that you're at now maybe is the kind of optimal point where founders look to kind of not take a seat back, but to bring in that expertise, and it's now we're at a point where, as you said, it's a relief, right? Saying, wow, now I'm focused on the stuff that gives me energy.
Absolutely. Well, I hope it's the right time. It feels like it's the right time. I think, when you do this, you read a lot to try to convince yourself it's the right decision. I read quite a bit of studies on it. It said around 6 or 7 years is about right for a startup to hand over the reins, and it's not unusual. I've spoken to a lot of people that have congratulated me. It's amazing who reaches out. They think I'm going to the Bahamas or something. It's clearly not the case, and a lot of people have reached out and said, actually, it's funny, when we have had investments or they're investors themselves, it's like we wouldn't invest in a company unless the founder had the room to move across and support the transition. It's really interesting how many times I heard that, because I think you've seen it in lots of businesses. And we're not at the scale of some other businesses that have that people would be aware of that have had major changes. And but it felt right for Stake. It's been something on the cards. It's something we needed. We're in a highly, I wouldn't say we're a complex business, but it's a sophisticated business now. We're in a category. It's people's money there. We've got our core focus is the custody and responsibility we have to manage, to look after their assets safely. And it's great to build a strong, scalable business. And you've got to get people in that have done it before, who know the landscape, who can bring something new and give you energy to go and get to the next stage. So look, I feel it's the optimal time. There's never a bad time to bring in great talent, ultimately, and we've been able to do that across the board. And John's, he's a great talent. We've got other great talent as well. So I feel like we're in a really good spot.
You're the ops guy, Dan. Matt just made a point there, which is something that's really been on my mind, and I'm kind of still grappling with in my business, where all the research and data that I've collected over the last decade or more on scaling businesses is, when you look at the stages of growth, they've been kind of categorized around the funding stage and the number of people. The challenge that I'm seeing moving forwards is obviously the investment landscape has changed drastically because of where cost of capital is at, but also the people side has changed drastically as well because of AI. And still seeing, even though tech companies are doing really well, we're still seeing significant layoffs because they're finding better ways of doing things. What did you see as being the kind of catalysts from an ops perspective of, hey, well, we're not necessarily scaling from 200 to 2,000 people because we don't need to, but we have to do these things in order. There are things that we still need to do to deliver on the vision. How did you kind of translate those operational things and those scaling things into this next 10 years, right? Because looking at what you would have done historically now is probably not what you're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah, no, great question, and that's the big challenge for me. So I'm chief operating officer, chief financial officer, but really is like, what are the structures? What's the team that we need to have in place, and how do we support people to go and grow and develop in their roles, and bring in new people who can significantly elevate and help our existing team to go and really move things forward. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, to be a really authentic leader, but to help our teams just really help them grow and develop. So if I look at where we've come from, what we've done, and what's actually been really successful for us in the past, is we've basically brought in people often who we know or who we've sort of come across, who and actually given them full remit, full authority, go and build a function, build a team, and go and deliver. And we're relying on them to go and work collaboratively with other parts of the business, ultimately, whether it's across operations or marketing or product or tech. And that's served us well while we've been a small, close-knit team of high-performing individuals. The reality is that you've now got somewhat decentralized teams. We've got over 100 people now, and you can't just rely on individuals' ingenuity to just go and take you to that next phase. You've actually got to go and invest behind it, and that's really where we're at. And it's like, great. So what's that look like from how do we go and encourage people to work more collaboratively together? How are we looking at what training we've got across the organization? How do we go and bring that together so we can help people develop and grow? Those are the challenges we've got today. And looking back 6-7 years ago, that's not something that we would have been like investing heavily in, because it was like, just go and write this line of code or service this customer. It's like, it's very different. It's just a very different stage. But from my perspective, at a personal level, I've always seen this as a challenge of like, how do you go and grow and develop in the role at different stages? So whether you've got 3 people sitting in an office and coming up with an idea to 110 people here today or so, and that's the challenge that I like. And that's, for me, actually transitioning from Matt in a CEO role to John in a CEO role is actually, that's what I like. So it's like, got a new fresh pair of eyes who's actually going to be sort of pushing me probably harder than to get to continue to drive the business forward.
Given the tightness of the relationship and the longevity of it, have you found at points in your relationship together that maybe you've got complacent or taken each other for granted every now and then, and you have to have, the kind of harsh words with each other?
For sure. I mean, there's always going to be frustrations in any relationship. There definitely have been. But as long as you can go and look each other in the eye and say, and just call it out and just work it through, and we've generally been able to do that pretty well.
From my side, like any relationship, you're going to have ups and downs, and but at the core, we trust each other, and we know that we're going to do the right thing. And if something pops up, he'll be honest with me, and I'll be honest with him, and we'll get through it. I feel like we can achieve anything together, and there's no qualms about making decisions. And I think we definitely stayed in each other's lanes a bit. Like, we stayed in separate lanes. Like Dan and I have very different skill sets, which I think was actually really good for the business. I wouldn't have been able to get to where we are without Dan, and hopefully he'd say the same for me. As I said, like, our relationship's it's changed, but it's better.
Yeah.
It's tighter, but it's different. And that's the thing. I don't think he'd want to hang out with me on the weekend as much, which is, we've got lots of kids. He's got more than me. But, it's so intense during, like, as I said, for a long period of time. It's like you actually need some space. But we know what each other's thinking. And if, I can drop him a note at midnight and he'll respond by 7 a.m. the next morning and vice versa. And, you can't do that with everyone. And we've been lucky enough to do it together and build something. And there's so much more to come.
One of the things that's really struck me in this last 18 months when I've been doing the podcast, it's kind of coincided with things getting a lot tougher for founders, is I've had more and more conversations with founders about where they've really consciously sought the parts of the business, parts of the role that give them energy, and they've tried to kind of outsource or at least kind of, push back on some of the things that don't give them energy. You talked there about skills and kind of the things that you're good at, but what are the things that give you energy and kind of get you, it's like, even though, you hit the brick wall, you kind of get the energy in the morning to go, we're gonna break through it.
Yeah. For me, I really like the product. Like, I really want to build something for customers. Like, it sounds very cliche, but it's the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why the business started. I feel I've got a lot of just experience in brokerage and having been a high frequency trader for a number of years. And I want to bring that to people. I think that there's a real gap to go do that. So that really drives me. And I like the detail. I like the craftsmanship around building a product. I like dotting the I's, crossing the T's. I actually enjoy getting into the weeds. Yeah. And when you're the CEO, you can't. You can't scale a business if you're in the weeds. So to be able to go back into that, I just sat with we're releasing a new part of our platform in the next few weeks, and just to be able to sit with the design team, work through it, put my, literally put the customer's shoes on and put them like, well, what's the customer thinking when they go through this? Like, it's just awesome. And I get off on that. Like, that just really excites me, and to be able to go and, see it, think about it, and then see it in the real world and someone using it. Like, there's nothing better for someone that wants to build something than actually seeing people use your product and appreciate it.
I just had this conversation this morning actually with a VC partner, and we were just talking about the challenge of being a founder, and you have to be product led, and so many aren't, but they think that they are, and it kind of creates so many complications around scaling the business. And one of the things that really kind of I've found distinguishes those founders who genuinely are product led is they absolutely immerse themselves in their customer's world, and they probably have been a customer themselves, and they're not afraid to get the answers to questions that they might not like the answer to.
I was in New Zealand last week. We had dinner with 31 customers. That's what got me energized. Yeah. My poor wife had to listen to me on a diatribe about how awesome it was. I don't think she really cares that much, but she took a phone call for 30 minutes. I told her how good it was. That's the stuff that energizes you. And, you take your CPO, and if we fly over to New Zealand, we just meet with customers. Like, that's what this is about. Yeah. Like, that's what we're building. Like, we've got, 4 tenants at stake, and one of them is customers, the other one's staff, stakeholders being, our partners and our shareholders. Like, if you don't do all 4, and customers are obviously a key pillar of that, your chair falls over. Yeah. You just got to build your business around, those 4 things, and you'll be okay. And you've got to do them all properly. Yeah. But back to your point about being customer focused, like, if you don't build for your customers, you don't have a business. Yeah. It's really that effing simple.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've lost, right? It's like people have, if you look at the process that they've gone through to start a business, it's have an idea, I love it, I'll build a pitch deck, and I'll ask strangers for money, and then I'll hire a chief of staff, and I'll go on this, kind of social media, speaking circuit, on sitting on panels, telling everybody what we're going to build, never speaking to customers, never building anything, and blowing investor cash. And that's actually been the model, right, for the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah. And nobody's kind of questioning the validity of, that isn't going to work anymore.
Yeah, but we go through those cycles in all markets, and we've seen it. As I said, 2021, 2020, 2021, you're not going to see that for a long time. It's now going to be like, and it's always the best product ultimately wins. You've got to market it, obviously you've got to build a brand, but your product needs to speak to what your customers' needs are and truly be an experience, not just a set of features. Like customers want experiences. We're now competing with the Netflixes, the Instagrams. Those are the things we're competing with for mindshare, the video games. Like you've got to build awesome experiences, and fintech is no different. We can't get away from it. We need to build better experiences that solve customer pain points, that make them feel more confident in what they're doing. Just like every other category has got winners and they win by producing great products that solve customer needs. And just because you're a fintech doesn't exclude you from that list. You just need to build awesome stuff for your customers and care about them. And if you don't do that, you're not going to win.
Yeah. Now, you talked about the 4 tenets, staff being one of them. I was actually speaking to one of your employees just before we started the podcast, and he was telling me that he used to work for Canva and he much prefers it here, and it's much more his kind of scene. And I asked him why, and he said, "Oh, look, I don't really feel like I'm building something here and I'm part of something." Given that, if you were to go on social media or the media or listen to the press or listen to, kind of the person in the street, they'd all put Canva as the place to work. How does that make you feel?
It feels, honestly, that's what it's about. Like the business has been built around its team to go and deliver great for customers, and if we feel we've got a place where people feel that they can have a career here, they can go and grow and develop, they can progress in the same way that our customers feel that they can progress, they can make their money work harder for them and make progress. That's what we want. So yeah, it feels pretty good, to be honest.
What you've just touched on there, I think, is the biggest challenge that faces any business as it grows. When you're smaller, you really only have to think of 2 stakeholders, your people and your customers, and they're usually one and the same, right? Like mindset, things that drive them. As you grow, you then get this third element, which is the investor. And in almost every instance, and I think the most successful businesses have managed to balance this, is that, usually there's then just a hierarchy where investors always first, and then say that your people or customer kind of come in as a poor second. What are you doing to maintain that balance and to ensure that as you grow and you scale, that you're kind of able to manage investor demands, as well as still delivering for your people and still delivering for your customers?
Yeah, I go back to that chair analogy. I think it needs the length of each chair leg needs to be the same, right? So you've got your staff, your customers, your shareholders, and your partners. If they're out of whack, the chair's wobbly, it falls over. For me, they've got to be equal. It sounds, I don't put one above the other. I put them all together. Every decision we make needs to consider all 4.
Yeah.
And you just got to make sure that it works for all 4. You just have to do that. And I think it may be a little bit of an art more than a science in terms of just finding that balance. But when you make a decision, you've got to consider all 4 stakeholders. I wouldn't want
it's like spinning plates, isn't it? It's like you've got to get the balance, and then it's stuck. It stays there.
Totally.
It's constant kind of movement of keeping things in balance.
Yeah, and you got to work with your partners to provide great customer outcomes, and you want to work with your partners, want to know your staff are great to work with, and your staff want to know that your partners treat them well. Like there's just so many different things at play, but every time you make a crucial decision, all 4 stakeholders need to be considered. That's just the very, very simple rule. Like, does this make sense for customers? Does it make sense for our staff? Can we deliver it with our partners? Will our partners get a benefit from it? And does it make sense for the long-term benefit of our shareholders as well? And if you consider all 4 things when you make a decision, and they generally tick all 4 boxes, you're okay. If they don't, you just don't do it.
Yeah. We're coming to a wrap. There's a kind of a philosophy that life runs in 7-year cycles. We're here and we've talked a lot about the first 7-year cycle of Stake. If we could go back in a time machine to 7 years ago and say, hey, this is where we're going to be sitting 7 years from now, would you have believed it?
About Stake, I always say that we always thought we can go and build a business with like loads of customers and lots of assets, but you don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, you've no idea what it actually takes to go and do it. So I think at the time we believed wholeheartedly that we're going to go and win the space. Like, we wouldn't have started it if we didn't, but we didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
So I think there was a very, very strong belief, but a very limited concept about what that meant. So, but if there were, then you probably wouldn't start it in the first place.
Yeah. I love that, because I remember being given advice when I was younger, fake it till you make it, and that never sat easy with me, right? And what I found was with my own business and just, spending all my time with people like yourself who've gone on and started businesses and either made them successful or not, is that I think the biggest secret to it, from a psychology perspective, is you have to believe it before you make it.
Yeah, you need to have, like a youthful naivety to you, because you need to go for it. You need to take risks. And if you assess every single risk and you try to play it forward, you'd never start, as Dan said. I think you need to jump in and learn how to swim a bit. And you know what? You'll make it through. Yeah. Like, you'll hit an obstacle, you'll turn right. Yeah. You hit the next obstacle, you turn left. And you just find a way to get through. And it's not easy. Trying to find a way to win or to build your business or to get through it's actually about how much pain you can endure ultimately. Yeah. That's the reality. And you got to try and enjoy it along the way, because otherwise it'll be a pretty bitter experience and you won't enjoy the journey. Okay, so we're 7 years from now, 2031.
Wow.
Sounds like science fiction movie or something.
That's scary.
Right. Yeah. We're doing the podcast. It's been going for 11 years. We're celebrating 14 years of Stake. Where are we at?
Where are you? Where am I? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where's Stake at?
Yeah. I think hopefully we've had a significant impact on the category in Australia. We've allowed Australians to do things they couldn't do before with their finances and given them more opportunity, access to financial products that were either expensive, complicated to access, or just generally out of reach. I think if we keep solving that problem in 1, 2, 3 or 7 years, we'll be absolutely ecstatic. It's much like Dan, I don't think you can afford it out. I think if we have the same energy and buzz around our customers and our staff, I'll be smiling from ear to ear.
No, I think as Matt said, I think there's going to be, if you, like what I was going to say before is, if you turn the clock back 7 years, the whole industry was in its infancy. It was still very strongly weighted to the big four banks and incumbents who've been around for many, many years. If you look at where we are now, there's actually been a significant influx of businesses that are technology first, customer centric, that are actually making pretty significant inroads in certain verticals, and I can see that baseline of customer centricity and technology with the quality of the talent, that they can start to expand that remit into outside of maybe narrower verticals. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see ultimately winners are going to become bigger winners, and you're going to go and be more established players in the broader financial services landscape in the market.
Yeah. So we get amazing talent listening to this podcast. If they want to be part of this next 7 years, what's the best way for them to find out about careers at Stake?
Formally, there's a Hello Stake careers page, but yeah, that's
our LinkedIn as well.
There's LinkedIn. We follow. Happy to, if anybody wants to hit me up, I'm happy to go and sort of just give any insights as well. But that's the main routes.
And where can people download the Stake app?
They can go on the website, hellostake.com, and they can go on the web, or they can download it from the App Store or the Play Store on Google as well.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for sharing the story. As always, folks, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. And if you are new to the show, make sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcast player, and please leave a review. It really helps us elevate awesome Aussie fintechs like Stake. Until the next episode, keep well. Fintech Chatter is produced by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll find world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures and you can find us at tier1people.com.